My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 75 years old. I live in a quiet suburb just outside Los Angeles. My house is small, a red brick home with shutters and a front yard full of roses. Their fragrance greets me each morning. I water them every day. Neighbors wave across their driveways, children ride bikes down the street, their laughter carried in the breeze. On Sundays, church bells ring. Families gather for cookouts and laughter. That was my world, simple, peaceful, and safe. After my husband passed away 5 years ago, life slowed to a gentle rhythm. It was just me, my garden, and books. I read old classics by the window, the sun warming my shoulders. Sometimes I baked apple pie, the recipe from my mother in Kentucky. People said I was strong, but inside I felt lonely. A widow clinging to small routines, hoping family ties would last. I had one son, Robert, a kind soul, but never strong-willed. The type who avoided conflict by staying silent. Robert married Victoria. She was beautiful and ambitious, heels clicking across the floor, her perfume filling the room. To neighbors, she seemed perfect. To me, she felt calculating. Her smile never touched her eyes. Her kindness felt rehearsed. Still, I welcomed her with care. I cooked Sunday dinners, on Thanksgiving, sweet potato casserole. On Christmas, I saved her a seat. I told myself family means forgiveness. I told myself she would soften in time. Sometimes it seemed almost true. She hugged me. She called me Mom. But something in her voice felt false, like a piano key out of tune. At night, by the fire, I worried about the years still ahead. The doctor had warned me time was running short, but I kept it secret. Why burden Robert and Victoria? So I prayed quietly each night for Robert's happiness, for Victoria's kindness, for peace in my family. I believed, perhaps foolishly, that love could win. Those were my last peaceful days because one piece of news was about to change everything. It would shatter my quiet life and reveal who Victoria really was. Before we move on, drop your city or state below. I want to see how far this story can reach. The lesson I learned is one every family should hear. Life went on quietly for a while. I tended my roses every morning. I baked pies for neighbors sometimes. I read by the fire each night. But slowly, I began to notice a shift in how Victoria behaved. At first, it was little things. Her questions during Sunday dinners changed. Instead of asking about my health or how I spent my afternoons, she asked about the house value. She asked about my savings. She looked around the living room, her eyes pausing on the antiques, the oak table from my parents, the china plates I kept from Kentucky. One afternoon, she laughed lightly. "Margaret, this place is so outdated. Wouldn't you rather sell it all and move into something modern? A big house in Beverly Hills, maybe. Somewhere with a pool and tennis courts." She smiled sweetly as she spoke, but her eyes searched my reaction. I sipped my tea slowly. This house has been my home. It holds memories of my husband. I have no need for more. She chuckled like I told a joke. "Well, think about it," she said. "A woman your age deserves comfort." Robert nodded quietly beside her. He avoided my eyes as usual. That silence from him hurt me. He was my only child. I wished he would speak up. Weeks passed and her visits increased. She brought glossy magazines with photos. Huge kitchens with marble counters gleamed. Backyard pools sparkling under California sun. She would place them on my table. Imagine your friends seeing you here. Imagine hosting Christmas in a mansion. Her voice dripped with practiced warmth. I smiled politely each time, but deep down I felt uneasy. She wasn't visiting for my company. She was circling like a hawk. Then came the Sunday barbecue. Robert grilled burgers in my backyard. Neighbors came with potato salad and lemonade. The kids ran through sprinklers, laughing loudly. Victoria made sure to sit close. She spoke louder than usual that day so everyone could hear her words. "We're thinking about moving soon," she said. "A bigger place closer to Hollywood. Somewhere more fitting for our lifestyle." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I froze, holding a paper plate. She gestured toward my house casually, and of course, we'd sell this one. I glanced around at the neighbors. Some looked surprised, some looked curious. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside I felt the sting. My home wasn't hers to sell, yet she spoke like it already was. Later that evening, after guests left, I stood at the kitchen sink. The smell of grilled meat lingered. So did her words, echoing sharply. Robert came in with empty glasses. I asked him directly, "Son, do you want me gone?" He looked startled like a child. "No, Mom," he said quietly. "Of course not." "Then why do you let her speak as if this house belongs to her?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His shoulders sagged under invisible weight. "She just wants what's best, Mom. We should think about the future." His words cut deeper than knives because the future he meant did not seem to include me. One afternoon, I walked into my garden. Victoria was already there waiting. She wore a designer dress and sunglasses that cost more than my entire grocery bill for a month. She waved at me dramatically. "Margaret, darling, let's take a drive. There's a house in Malibu listed. The view is breathtaking," she promised. I hesitated but followed reluctantly. We drove along Pacific Coast Highway. The ocean waves crashed against cliffs. Her convertible roof was down. She looked like she owned the world. The house she showed me was huge, 3 stories high with glass walls. A swimming pool stretched 50 feet. She turned to me, smiling wide. "This could all be yours, Margaret. You just need to let us handle it. Sign over the paperwork for convenience." I stepped back from the glass. The Pacific stretched endlessly before me. I thought of my quiet roses, the small kitchen where I baked pies. This house wasn't for me. It was for her hunger, her ambition, her image. I shook my head slowly. "I'm fine where I am, Victoria." Her smile faltered just for a moment, but she recovered quickly and laughed. "Oh, don't worry," she said smoothly. "You'll see it's the right choice." She linked her arm through mine, but her grip felt like steel. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked past midnight loudly. The house felt heavy with silence. I walked into the living room. The photo albums sat on shelves. Pictures of Robert as a child, his toothless grin at 6 years old, his graduation cap crooked at 18. My heart ached remembering those days. When he was mine, not hers. When his hand reached for mine, not for the hand that pulled him away. I whispered to the empty room, "What happened to us, Robert? Where did I lose you?" No answer, came only quiet tears. The next Sunday came quickly. Victoria arrived early with shopping bags. She unpacked wine cheese, expensive chocolates. Robert trailed behind, carrying more bags. I raised an eyebrow. "This is too much, Victoria. You don't need to spend money." She laughed and waved her hand. "Oh, Margaret, you deserve the best. Now about that house in Beverly Hills." Her tone sharpened like broken glass. "We should really move forward soon." I put my teacup down firmly. "This is my home. I don't want a mansion. I don't need luxury." Her smile vanished instantly. Her eyes hardened cold as ice. Robert stared at the floor. The room grew painfully quiet. I realized then this wasn't about helping me. This was about taking from me. And they weren't going to stop. The tension in my house grew heavier. Each visit from Victoria felt sharper. Her voice was sweet in front of neighbors, but behind closed doors it turned cold. One Thursday morning, she arrived early. She carried a folder under her arm. Robert followed behind with lowered eyes. I poured coffee, but my hands trembled. She sat at the dining table. "Margaret, we need to talk," she said. Her tone was businesslike without warmth. Robert sat silently beside her. She slid papers across the table. The words "power of attorney" glared up. "All it needs is your signature. Then we can handle everything for you." I stared at the pages slowly. My chest tightened as I read. These papers gave them full control bank accounts, assets, property, all included. I pushed them back toward her. "No, Victoria," I said firmly. "I can manage my own affairs." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Mom," Robert said softly, "please consider this. It will make things easier for us." For us, not for me, I thought. My throat ached with unspoken words. I folded my hands tightly together. "I appreciate your concern," I said, "but I will not sign these papers." Victoria leaned back, crossing her arms. Her mask cracked for the first time. Her voice dropped lower and sharper. "You are not well, Margaret," she said. "Everyone can see you are slipping." Robert kept his eyes on the floor. My heart pounded against my ribs. "Slipping?" I asked quietly in disbelief. "I am fine. I am not confused." Victoria tapped the folder with her nails. "Doctors would disagree," she said smoothly. "We already have medical notes prepared." Robert flinched as she spoke those words. What doctors? I demanded, suddenly angry. No one has examined me recently. Her lips curled into a smile. Let's just say we are prepared. My stomach dropped like a stone. They had planned this behind my back, conversations I was never part of, papers I had never seen. I stood up, my chair scraping. You will not take my freedom. You will not steal my dignity. My voice shook but stayed firm. Victoria rose too, her eyes blazing. Her sweetness was gone completely now. This house is ours, she hissed. You have 1 week to leave. My breath caught in my throat. Robert finally looked at me. His eyes were full of shame, but he said nothing to stop her. I whispered, Robert, is this true? Are you really throwing me out? He rubbed his forehead, avoiding my gaze. It's for the best, Mom, he muttered. For the best, I repeated bitterly. For the best for whom, Robert, for you, for her, never for me. I felt my knees weaken under me. Victoria picked up the papers briskly. You will leave by next Friday. If not, we will take legal action. She straightened her blouse confidently. Legal action against your own mother. The thought pierced my chest deeply. I looked at Robert again. He could not meet my eyes. The week that followed was unbearable. Whispers spread through the neighborhood quickly. Somehow people knew about my health. They believed I was losing my mind. At church, whispers followed my steps. Poor Margaret, she is declining, they said. It must be time for a nursing home. Their pity cut deeper than cruelty. I packed slowly through the days. Every photograph carried a memory: Robert as a boy with scraped knees, my husband Charles holding him proudly. I wrapped china plates in old newspaper. My hands shook as I folded clothes. 75 years of life reduced to 1 suitcase and 2 small boxes. At night, I lay awake, restless. The house creaked with familiar sounds, yet it felt less like home. It felt like a place stolen. One evening, I confronted Robert privately. He stood in the driveway smoking something he had quit years ago. The stress was eating at him. Son, I said softly, please stop this. Do not let her push you. This is my home, my life. Tears filled my tired eyes. He exhaled smoke into the night air. Mom, you don't understand, he said. Victoria is right about the future. We can't keep living like this. I reached for his hand, trembling. Living like this means with me, with the mother who raised you. His hand slipped from mine quietly. I turned away, wiping my face. He had chosen his silence again. His silence was the loudest betrayal. Friday morning came too quickly. Victoria arrived with boxes and bags. Robert trailed behind, carrying more. She pointed at my belongings sternly. That goes to Goodwill, she ordered. That pile is trash, she added. I grabbed my suitcase protectively. This is all I am taking. She smirked, watching me clutch it. Fine, take your little bag, she said. But remember, this is not your home. Her words rang like iron chains. Neighbors peeked from their driveways, curious. I lowered my head in shame. The roses swayed in the breeze, their petals bright against my tears. I stepped out the front door. Every step felt like betrayal echoing. Robert did not follow me. He stood frozen in the doorway. The morning I left my house, the sky was strangely bright and clear. The California sun warmed my shoulders, but inside I felt frozen. The suitcase rattled against the sidewalk, its tiny wheels bumping over cracks. I walked slowly past familiar houses, neighbors pretending not to stare. Every step away felt heavier. 75 years of life gone. Robert's silence echoed in my ears. Victoria's cold voice burned in memory. I thought about heading to church, but I knew whispers waited there. I thought about a neighbor's couch, but pity is a cruel companion. Instead, I walked toward Main Street. The little diner stood on the corner. I pushed the glass door open slowly. The bell chimed above my head. The waitress recognized me instantly. Morning, Miss Margaret, she said gently. Table for 1 again. I nodded, hiding the tremor in my lips. She poured coffee into a chipped mug. The smell rose warm and steady. I sat there staring into steam, wondering where to go next. Then the bell above the door rang. A tall man stepped inside, slowly, gray suit, pressed shoes polished neatly. It was Ethan Miller, the lawyer. He spotted me and approached quickly. "Margaret, I've been looking for you. May I sit?" he asked politely. I nodded, though my chest tightened. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There's something I must tell you. Something I couldn't say before." I braced myself for another blow, but his next words shocked me. "The inheritance is not what it seems." I blinked, not understanding his meaning. He explained carefully, slowly. "Your late friend set up a test. She wanted to see true character. She suspected Victoria's greed long ago. The $500 million story was part of that very plan. The actual inheritance is far smaller enough for you to live comfortably, but not the fortune Victoria believes." I gripped the edge of the table. "So it was all a test." "Yes," he said, his eyes serious. "She trusted me to carry it out. And Margaret, you passed with honor. You refused to sign the papers. You stayed true to her wishes." I let out a shaky breath. Relief mixed with grief and anger. All this pain, all this betrayal over money that never existed. Ethan leaned closer, still speaking softly. "Victoria and Robert will ruin themselves. They borrowed against future wealth already. They signed loans they cannot repay. Within weeks, their world will crumble, and you, Margaret, must decide calmly whether to forgive or walk away." My eyes filled with hot tears. For once, someone was on my side. Someone saw through Victoria's mask, but my heart still ached deeply. Robert was still my child. I whispered, "Why did you hide this?" Ethan looked pained and sincere. "If I told you sooner, Margaret, they would have suspected everything. Your silence allowed the truth to bloom. Now the mask is falling quickly. By Christmas, they will face collapse, and you will stand free." I pressed my hands together tightly. I wanted to laugh and cry. They thought they had destroyed me, but really, they destroyed themselves. That evening, I rented a room, a modest motel off Route 66. Faded curtains, buzzing neon sign, but to me it felt safe. I unpacked my single suitcase, carefully hung my dresses in the small closet, placed my Bible on the nightstand, sat on the bed, breathing slowly. The room smelled of detergent and dust. Still, it was mine at least. No one could shove me out. No one could claim my key. I pulled out a notebook quietly. My mind began to sharpen again. They believed I was broken, useless, but I still had fight left. I began writing a plan slowly. Step 1, gather every document possible. Step 2, meet Ethan again privately. Step 3, prepare for the storm. The motel clock ticked past midnight. I kept writing by dim lamp. My heart no longer only aching. It was beating with determination. Days turned into weeks quickly. I met Ethan at his office. Stacks of files covered his desk. He showed me loan agreements, contracts. Victoria and Robert had borrowed heavily millions promised to banks and lenders. Luxury cars, new furniture, designer clothes, all purchased with imagined money. Ethan shook his head gravely. "They will drown in debt, Margaret. Their arrogance has no bottom, but you must stay silent." I nodded, gripping my handbag tightly. Silence was my new armor. They thought me weak and beaten, but truth was my quiet shield. Meanwhile, Victoria's world glittered brighter. She posted photos online constantly. New dresses, cocktails, rooftop dinners, hashtags about success, wealth, family. Neighbors whispered, admiring her lifestyle. Even church folks smiled approvingly. But I knew the truth underneath, all of it built on sand. Robert rarely called me anymore. When he did, his voice was strained. "Mom," he said, "money is tight. But don't worry, things will change." I wanted to shout the truth, but I held my tongue tightly. Sometimes silence screams louder than words, and my silence grew powerful. One evening at the motel, I opened the curtains slowly. The sun was setting crimson red. Cars rushed down the highway below. I thought of Charles, my husband. What would he have done? His voice echoed in my memory. "Stand firm, Margaret," he would say. I closed the curtains firmly. This was my fight now, and I would not back down. The next Sunday, I went walking past the church along the park. Children played basketball on cracked courts. Families grilled hot dogs by picnic tables. I sat on a bench quietly. Two women nearby gossiped loudly. "Did you hear about Victoria?" one asked. "She's hosting a gala next weekend. They say she's buying another house. Beverly Hills again. Can you imagine?" I gripped my purse tighter, listening. They truly believed her shining mask. But soon I thought quietly, the mask will shatter in public and everyone will finally see. As the sun dipped lower, I whispered a prayer gently. "Lord, give me patience and courage. Let truth reveal itself in time." I stood and walked home slowly. The motel sign buzzed faintly. My notebook lay waiting on the bed. I picked it up, determined again. They thought I was finished, but I was just beginning. The storm was coming soon, and this time I would be ready. The weeks that followed were heavy with silence. I kept to myself at the motel. I read newspapers in the lobby daily. I waited for the storm to break. And break it did. One Tuesday morning, Ethan called urgently. "Margaret," he said, "you should sit down. The First Bank has filed against Robert. The loans are collapsing faster than expected." I held the phone tightly. "How much?" I whispered quietly. "Over $2 million, he replied. "And that's just the beginning, Margaret." I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. It had started. The glittering life they built was already cracking apart piece by piece. That Friday, I walked into town. The local paper headline screamed in bold, "Prominent couple faces foreclosure in Beverly Hills. Robert and Victoria's names right beneath." I stood frozen on the sidewalk. People gathered, whispering, reading the article. Some shook their heads in pity. Others smirked at the irony. I bought a copy for myself. Back at the motel, I read slowly. The paper detailed unpaid loans, mortgages, lavish spending sprees, and reckless investments. It was all there, black and white. Every lie, every pretense, every dollar wasted. And now, the whole city knew. A week later, I sat quietly. The phone on the motel nightstand rang. I picked it up slowly. It was Robert, his voice trembling. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't know what to do. We've lost the house in Beverly Hills. Victoria maxed out every credit card. We're drowning, Mom. We can't breathe." I gripped the receiver tightly. Part of me wanted to comfort him, but another part stayed silent, cold. He had chosen her voice over mine. "Where is Victoria?" I asked calmly. He paused, then whispered, crying softly. "She's gone, Mom. She left last night with a suitcase." The line went quiet except for sobs. I closed my eyes, shaking my head. The empire had finally devoured its queen. Days later, I saw Robert again. He came to the motel unannounced. His shirt wrinkled, his face unshaven. He looked older, weaker, smaller than before. He sat across from me, trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry," he began. "I should have stopped her sooner, but I was weak, too weak." Tears streamed down his tired face. He clutched my hands tightly, begging, "Please help me, Mom, please. I have nothing left now." I pulled my hands back slowly. My heart ached seeing my own son reduced to this hollow, broken figure. But pain still outweighed compassion. "You threw me out, Robert," I said. "You stood silent while she cursed me. You let them say I was crazy. Now you want me to forget." He dropped his head, sobbing. "I can't undo it, Mom," he whispered. "I can't fix the damage I caused. But please don't abandon me completely." Later that evening, Ethan visited. He carried more documents under his arm. He sat on the motel chair. "The banks are moving quickly," he said. "Robert has less than a month left. The house, the cars, everything is gone. They may even press charges soon, fraud, misrepresentation, reckless loans." I listened quietly, my hands folded. So this was the price of greed. This was the cost of betrayal. Ethan nodded gravely, his eyes kind. He leaned forward, speaking softly. "You do not have to save him. You owe him nothing after this pain, but I know he is your son." I turned to the window silently. Outside, neon lights flickered in the dark. Cars rushed past on Route 66. Life moved on without pausing for us. 2 nights later, Robert returned again. This time, he looked worse than before. His eyes red, his hands shaking. He fell to his knees before me. "Mom, please," he begged, sobbing uncontrollably. "I can't do this alone anymore. I have nowhere to go, no one left to call." My heart twisted inside my chest. The boy I raised was gone, but somewhere deep inside this broken man, I still saw my child. I knelt slowly, placing a hand on his trembling shoulder gently. "Robert," I said quietly, "forgiveness does not erase the past. You chose silence when I needed your voice. You chose her ambition over my love. But if you want to change now, you must face your consequences fully." He sobbed, nodding his head quickly. "I will, Mom, I promise. I just need your strength again. I cannot stand without you." That night after he left, I sat by the motel window. The neon glow painted my face. I whispered to the empty room, "Charles, if you can hear me, your son is lost and hurting. Do I lift him or let him fall?" My tears fell silently onto my lap. The night answered with quiet wind, but in my heart I knew this was not just punishment. This was a lesson written in pain. The next Sunday at church, I saw Robert sitting in the back, his head bowed, his hands shaking. He had not been in years. Whispers spread quickly in the pews, people pointing, murmuring, gossiping. I kept my head high, quietly. The hymn rose above their voices. After service, he approached carefully. "Mom," he said, "will you sit with me?" I hesitated but nodded slowly. We sat together on the church steps. He stared at the pavement, ashamed. "I am ready to change," he said. "I want to rebuild from nothing. Will you stand with me?" I looked at him long and hard. The boy I raised flickered inside him, but scars of betrayal still burned deeply. My voice came out firm but calm. "Robert, I will not carry your debt. I will not erase what you did, but I will not abandon you either. If you truly change, I will see." He nodded, tears falling freely again. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered hoarsely. "Thank you for not closing the door." The storm outside began to settle, but inside me another storm raged. Even after Robert's tears and apologies, I felt a hollow space widening. The motel room felt smaller each night. The hum of the neon sign, the ticking clock on the dresser, all reminders of my displacement. I had no garden anymore, no roses waiting at dawn, no warm kitchen with pie cooling, just this temporary space of survival. I walked Main Street in the mornings. The bakery smelled of fresh bread. The coffee shop buzzed with chatter, yet I felt invisible among them. People passed without recognition. Some glanced but quickly looked away. Whispers still circled about me. "She lost her house," they said. At church, the stares continued. Some pitied me. Others judged me. Their voices cut sharper than knives. It felt easier to stay away. So I sat in the motel, often watching traffic rush by the window, couples holding hands, laughter spilling freely. Life moved forward while I stood still. Robert called less as weeks passed, his shame heavy, his words short. "Mom, I'm trying," he would say then. Silence for days afterward. I wanted to believe his efforts, but I saw no proof yet. Trust once shattered takes long rebuilding, and I was too tired waiting. One evening, I turned on television. A news anchor spoke with urgency. Another foreclosure hit Beverly Hills families. The camera panned across luxury gates. I saw Victoria for a moment, her face pale, her eyes angry. She shoved cameras, shouting no comments, then vanished into the mansion's shadows. I switched off the screen quickly, her image still haunted my heart. The woman who ripped my family apart was now running from her own downfall. But even her suffering gave no peace because my son still carried scars, and I still carried loneliness. Nights grew longer as autumn deepened. I wrapped myself in a motel blanket, the fabric thin, the edges frayed. I missed my old quilt at home. I closed my eyes, imagining roses, imagining Robert as a boy again, his laughter chasing fireflies in the yard, Charles lifting him high under stars. The memories warmed me briefly, then faded, leaving the cold. Loneliness pressed against my chest heavily. Sometimes it felt hard to breathe. I whispered into the empty air, "Lord, why have you left me? Why must my final years be filled with exile and sorrow?" No answer came, only silence, but silence became my companion now. One Sunday, I walked to the park. Children played soccer, shouting joyfully. Parents clapped from folding chairs nearby. The smell of popcorn filled the air. I sat on a bench quietly. A little girl skipped over smiling. She handed me a dandelion flower. "Here, lady, for you," she said. Her mother called her back quickly, but the tiny flower stayed in my hand, its fragile stem trembling in breeze. A simple gift, yet powerful reminder. Life still had moments of grace. Even in exile, beauty could appear. Even in sorrow, kindness could find me. Back at the motel, I wrote again. My notebook filled with scribbled lines, some about anger, some about grief, some about hope, flickering like candlelight. I wrote about forgiveness slowly, carefully, not for Robert or Victoria alone, but for myself, for my peace. Forgiveness as a key to freedom, yet emptiness still lingered stubbornly. The loss of my home echoed. The betrayal of my son burned. The absence of family hollowed me. I closed the notebook and sighed. The road ahead still felt long, but I was not finished yet. Then one cold November night, I heard a knock at the door. The motel hallway echoed strangely. I opened it with caution. Robert stood there, hunched, trembling. Rain soaked his jacket and hair. He looked smaller than ever before. "Mom, please. Can I come in?" I stepped aside quietly. He sat on the edge of bedwater, dripping onto worn carpet. He buried his face in hands. "I lost everything," he whispered. "I don't even have a car. I walked 3 miles to get here. I have nowhere else to go." My chest ached deeply hearing him. He was still my child after all, but pain and trust warred inside. "You made your choices, Robert," I said. "Now you face their weight alone. But I will not close my door. You can rest here tonight." His sobs filled the small room. The emptiness between us shrank briefly, but it did not vanish completely. Wounds that deep heal slowly, if ever. That night after he slept, I sat awake by the window. The neon glow flickered faintly again. Cars rushed past on Route 66. I whispered to Charles quietly, "Your son is broken beyond repair, but I cannot let him die inside." "What should I do, my love?" Silence again, but also a strange calm, as if the answer was waiting, not from the past, but from me, from strength I did not know. I looked at Robert curled asleep. He looked like a boy again, fragile, desperate, searching for protection. I realized forgiveness was not optional. It was survival for both of us because without it we would drown, not just in debt, but in despair. Morning came gray and cold. Robert stirred, wiping tears from eyes. He whispered, "Thank you," softly. I nodded but said nothing yet. My path was still uncertain, but I knew one truth clearly. Isolation had taught me strength. Emptiness had carved space for healing. Now the question was simple. Would I use that strength for him, or keep it only for myself? I folded the motel blanket gently. I picked up my notebook again. I wrote one sentence carefully, slowly. "Forgiveness begins in emptiness." And maybe that emptiness was not the end, but the beginning of something new. The days grew shorter as December came. Robert stayed in the motel quietly. He helped sweep floors, fetch coffee. It was the least he could do. But shame hung heavy around him. He spoke little lies, always down. The son I remembered was gone. In his place, a ghost remained. One cold Monday morning, Ethan called, his voice urgent through the receiver. "Margaret, it's time," he said firmly. "The truth must be revealed now." I agreed, though my stomach turned. The moment had finally arrived. The mask would be ripped away, and the world would see clearly. That Friday, Ethan arranged a meeting at the county courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. Reporters gathered, cameras flashing wildly. Whispers echoed in the marble hall. Robert walked beside me slowly, his jacket borrowed, his shoes scuffed. Every step he dragged like chains. Victoria was nowhere to be seen. Ethan met us at the entrance, his briefcase heavy, his face serious. "Are you ready, Margaret?" he asked. I nodded, though my knees trembled. We entered the courtroom quietly. A judge sat high above us. Lawyers shuffled papers, the gallery buzzing. The air smelled of wood polish. When Victoria finally arrived, the room seemed to freeze. She wore a fur coat, expensive diamond earrings glittering under fluorescent lights. But her face betrayed the truth. Tired, pale eyes ringed with shadows. Her smile forced, sharp as glass. She sat across, refusing to look. The judge called the case forward. Ethan stood slowly, clearing his throat. Your Honor, this case reveals fraud, a family torn by deception and greed. He presented documents one by one, loan agreements, bank notices, unpaid mortgages, every signature, every reckless purchase. The truth spilled across the courtroom floor. Whispers spread like wildfire in the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing bright. Victoria shifted uneasily, adjusting her coat. Her mask was slipping for all. Then Ethan spoke of the inheritance, the $500 million story, the test designed by Margaret's friend, the real truth behind the fortune. Gasps erupted across the room loudly. Reporters nearly jumped from their seats. The fortune was never real. The empire was built on sand. Victoria's face drained of color instantly. She gripped the table, knuckles white. Robert lowered his head in shame. I sat silent, breathing evenly. The judge raised a hand for quiet. This court recognizes reckless intent, financial ruin caused by selfish ambition. The record will show the truth. When the session ended, chaos erupted. Reporters swarmed outside the courthouse doors. Microphones shoved faces, snapping questions. How much was real, Margaret? I lifted my hand calmly. The truth is simple, I said. Money can blind the heart quickly, but character is revealed in hardship. Flashbulbs blinded me momentarily, but my words carried strength. I walked past the cameras slowly. Robert trailed behind, silently weeping. Victoria darted out a side exit, her fur coat flapping in wind. No cameras followed her anymore. Her fall was already complete. Back at the motel that night, Robert sat on the bed crying. I have shamed you publicly, he said. I destroyed our family completely. I placed my hand on his. Truth needed to come out, Robert. Without it, you would never change. Without it, I would never heal. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. The silence between us softened slightly. The distance shrank inch by inch. The next Sunday, I returned to church for the first time in weeks. Whispers rose again as I entered, but this time they carried respect. People moved aside as I passed. A woman touched my arm gently. Margaret, you are stronger than anyone. I smiled faintly, whispering, Thank you. The hymn rose high above us, voices joined in unity, powerful. And for the first time again, I felt a sliver of peace. Later, Ethan visited the motel quietly. You did well, Margaret, he said. The truth is fully out now. No more secrets, no more lies. I nodded, folding my notebook gently. The storm had torn everything apart, but it also cleared the sky and sunlight was beginning to return. Still, emptiness lingered in my chest. The roses were gone, the house lost. But strength had returned quietly, steadily, and truth had set me free. The courthouse revelation spread like wildfire. By Monday morning, the whole city buzzed. News stations replayed the story non-stop. Magazines printed my name in bold. At the motel, I watched quietly, the anchor's voice steady, serious. The inheritance was never real, they said. The family collapsed under its own greed. Reporters camped outside Beverly Hills homes. Neighbors whispered into microphones eagerly. Yes, they threw her out, one said. Yes, they claimed she was unstable. I turned off the television firmly. Enough noise, enough gossip, enough spectacle. But I knew the fallout had begun. Robert barely left the room. He sat on the bed, mostly his eyes hollow, his voice faint. Mom, I ruined everything, he whispered. I listened quietly without response. He needed silence more than pity. He needed to face the truth fully. He began working odd jobs, slowly sweeping floors, stocking shelves late nights. $8 an hour, cash only. But he did not complain once. For the first time in years, I saw him sweat with honesty. It was small, but it was real. Victoria, however, vanished completely. Her photos disappeared from social media. Her friends stopped answering questions. The woman who glittered in diamonds was now a ghost hiding in shadows. Rumors flew across the city quickly. She fled to Nevada, one paper said. She sold jewelry to cover debts. Some claimed she lived in motels. But no one truly knew, and I no longer cared. Her absence was punishment enough. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the motel. He carried another folder of papers. The banks finished their cases, he said. Victoria is personally liable for millions. Robert owes debts too, but smaller. He may still recover slowly, carefully. I nodded quietly, folding my hands. So the truth had run its course. Ethan looked at me kindly. The law is finished, Margaret. Now the choice is yours. What will you do next? That night I sat at the desk. The motel lamp flickered softly above. My notebook open pages filled with lines. I read each word carefully, slowly. Pain, loss, betrayal, forgiveness, faith, the story of my life now. But another word appeared quietly, hope. I wrote it in bold letters. Hope not for money, not for mansions. Hope for peace inside me. Hope for freedom at last. The next morning I walked downtown. Shops opened early, coffee aroma filled streets. People glanced at me differently now. Some nodded respectfully, some smiled faintly. The woman once whispered about harshly was now seen with new eyes, not as a victim but survivor, not as weak but strong. I sat at the diner counter. The waitress poured hot coffee cheerfully. "Morning, Miss Margaret," she said warmly. "Haven't seen you here in a while." I smiled faintly, sipping the mug. The warmth steadied my shaking hands. "Yes, I'm still here," I replied. Still standing, still breathing, still alive. Later, Robert joined me at the diner. He looked tired but cleaner, calmer. "Mom," he said softly, "thank you for not abandoning me completely." He stirred his coffee nervously. "I want to rebuild slowly," he said. "A small place, an honest life. No lies, no mansions, no greed." I studied his face carefully. The boy I raised flickered again, fragile but present, fighting to return. I nodded slowly but firmly. "Then prove it, Robert," I said. "Work with your hands, work with heart. Show me change, not words." He nodded, determination sparking faintly. Weeks passed quietly after that. Robert worked at a hardware store 10 miles from the motel daily. He stacked lumber-measured nails, cut wood. His hands blistered raw at first, but he never complained once. Slowly, his shoulders straightened slightly. Slowly, his voice grew stronger, steadier. Each evening, he returned exhausted, but his eyes carried faint pride. For the first time in years, he was becoming a man again. Meanwhile, whispers of Victoria faded slowly. Her name no longer filled headlines. Her face no longer shined on screens. She was gone, erased, forgotten. And maybe that was justice enough, not prison, not handcuffs, not trial, but a life stripped of everything, a life alone with her greed. One rainy night, Robert spoke softly. "Mom, do you think she'll come back?" I shook my head slowly, firmly. "She's gone, son. She chose her path." He stared at the ceiling quietly. "I wish I had chosen differently. I wish I had stood by you." Tears slipped down his tired cheeks. I reached over, holding his hand. "The past is written, Robert, but tomorrow is not. Write it better this time." The motel neon flickered outside, but inside I felt lighter slowly. The truth had been revealed fully. The fallout had burned everything false away. Now only ashes remained behind us, but in ashes seeds can grow. Perhaps from this soil something new would bloom again. Winter settled heavy across Los Angeles. Cold winds swept through suburban streets. Christmas lights twinkled on houses brightly, but my motel window stayed bare. Robert worked long hours each day. At night, he collapsed on the bed, his hands rough, his back sore, but his eyes carried weary pride. Sometimes he stared at the ceiling, his voice quiet, heavy with guilt. "Mom, I wasted so many years. I chose wrong over and over." I listened without interrupting him. Regret is a heavy teacher. It presses down until bones ache, but sometimes it builds new strength. One Saturday, he asked nervously, "Would you walk with me, Mom, to the old house just once I want to see it again?" My chest tightened hearing his request. Memories flooded sharp, painful, fresh, but I nodded slowly after silence. "Yes, Robert, we will go." We drove through quiet neighborhoods, the roads familiar, the trees unchanged. Finally, the red brick house appeared. My roses still bloomed in the yard. A for sale sign leaned crookedly. The windows dark, the curtains gone. Strangers had walked through my memories. Strangers had measured my kitchen walls. Robert parked and sat silently, his face pale, his hands shaking. "This was my crime, Mom," he said. "I took your home away." His voice cracked into sobs. I ruined your peace, destroyed your trust. I traded family for greed, and I can never undo it. I stared at the house quietly. Every brick whispered of my past. Every rosebush carried my years, but strangely, I felt calm. The house was gone already. The life there gone too. Only lessons remained heavy and clear. I turned to Robert softly. The cost of regret is steep, but mercy does not come free either. It asks for change daily. He wiped his eyes, nodding quickly. I will pay that cost, Mom. I will change every single day, not with words, but with work. We sat there a long time. The sky turned orange with sunset. Finally, I whispered, "Let's go home." He blinked, then asked softly, "Home?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Wherever we stand together with honesty, that place can be home again." Christmas Eve came quickly afterward. The church glowed with candles inside. Families filled pews wearing festive sweaters. Children sang carols, their voices bright. I sat in the back quietly. Robert sat beside me nervously. Some eyes still judged us harshly. Others softened with quiet compassion. When the hymn began, I sang, my voice cracked, but carried steady. Robert's voice joined mine, trembling. For a moment, I felt whole. After service, people approached gently. One man shook Robert's hand firmly. "I know it's hard," he said, "but keep going, you're not alone." A woman hugged me softly. "Margaret, you are light to us. Your strength gives hope to many." I smiled faintly through my tears. Back at the motel that night, Robert placed a small gift box. "Mom, Merry Christmas," he whispered nervously. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside lay a single silver locket, a photo of Charles on one side, a photo of Robert as a boy inside. My throat tightened. My eyes filled. "Do you forgive me, Mom?" he asked. My hands closed around the locket. Tears slipped down my cheeks freely. "I forgive you, Robert," I whispered. "But forgiveness does not erase scars. It means I choose love again." He nodded, tears running down too. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you." The room fell quiet afterward, but it was a healing silence, not emptiness, but something gentler, calmer. The cost of regret was paid. I wore the locket close to heart, and for the first time, truly, I felt mercy wash over me, not just for Robert, but myself. The next morning, sun shone brightly. Children played with toys on sidewalks. Neighbors waved cheerful greetings across fences. Life kept moving forward steadily. I stood outside breathing crisp air, Robert beside me carrying coffee cups. "We may not have riches," he said, "but we have another chance." "Yes," I replied quietly, smiling. "And that is worth more than $500 million ever could." Spring arrived soft and warm in California. Birds filled the air with songs again. The motel felt less like exile. It felt more like a waiting room. Robert worked steadily at the hardware store, his hands strong, his back straighter. Every paycheck small but honest, every step forward slow but true. I watched him closely each day. The boy I raised reappeared slowly, not perfect, not whole, but present. That was enough for me. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by smiling. "Good news, Margaret," he said warmly. "The last case against you is closed. You are free, completely free." I breathed out relief finally. Months of whispers and rumors ended. The truth stood tall in records, and I stood tall with it. Ethan sipped tea across from me. "Victoria is gone for good," he said. "She filed bankruptcy in Nevada quietly, her name erased from every circle. No more galas, no more diamonds. Her greed ate her alive fully." I nodded quietly, feeling no triumph, only a steady, calm acceptance. Weeks later, Robert saved enough money. He rented a tiny one-bedroom, 700 square feet, small, simple, but it was his place finally. He invited me over proudly. The carpet smelled new paint, fresh, the kitchen small but bright. He showed me the fridge stocked. "Mom, I did this myself," he said. "No loans, no lies, no tricks, just work, sweat hours of effort." I smiled, tears filling my eyes. I hugged him tightly, whispering softly, "This is the beginning. Robert, not just for you, but us." As for me, I found peace. I joined a senior center nearby, 3 miles from the motel downtown. Every morning, I walked there smiling. We painted landscapes, played bingo, laughed. We cooked chili, shared pie slices. The emptiness inside me lightened the silence, less heavy, more gentle. I planted roses in small pots, not a big yard, but enough. Their fragrance filled my window again. Home lived inside me after all. One Sunday after service, the pastor spoke. He looked out across the congregation. "Life will test you," he said, "but storms do not last forever." I squeezed Robert's hand gently. We both knew storms firsthand. We both survived, but not unchanged, and maybe that was grace itself. Months later, news came quietly. Victoria was seen bussing tables in Reno, her hair dull, her clothes plain. She kept her head down, silent. No diamonds, no flashing cameras anymore. No one calling her name loudly. Only plates, glasses, orders shouted fast. The empire reduced to ashes completely. I felt no anger anymore, only pity for her emptiness. Her punishment was her own reflection. Robert asked me one evening, "Do you regret forgiving me, Mom?" I looked at him steadily. "No, Robert, I do not regret. Forgiveness freed me from bitterness chains. Forgiveness gave me peace again. It gave you a chance, too. Even if you failed, it mattered." He nodded, tears in his eyes. Then he whispered, "I won't fail again." Summer came bright and golden. The roses bloomed in full color. Robert cooked burgers in his apartment. We laughed over sweet tea glasses. Neighbors waved through open windows, smiling. Music played from radios outside, and for the first time, truly, it felt like home again. Looking back, the lesson is clear. Money comes and goes like wind. Greed burns everything in its path, but love and forgiveness endure quietly. I may not have millions today, but I have freedom and peace. I have my son back slowly, and that is wealth beyond measure. Sometimes the people we trust betray us. Sometimes family wounds cut deepest. But healing is possible even then if we choose love over bitterness. So I ask you tonight, what would you choose in my place? Would you hold on to anger forever, or would you risk forgiveness instead? And don't forget to subscribe right now, because more family stories are coming, stories that will touch your heart.